Psychotechnologies live. Well, here we are. I want to talk about the metaphysics of effective altruism.
I want to hear about the metaphysics of effective altruism.
Did you? We're so lame. Do you have like a? Maybe we should start with like effective altruism before we go into like the metaphysics of.
Okay, but don't spend too much time. People are expecting the metaphysics, not the explanation. Oh, do you want me to do it?
Yeah, do you want to like give us a grounding of like what is effective altruism?
So to me, and not everyone would agree with this, but to me, there are two things that are called effective altruism that are very much overlapping, but are not the same. So there's this philosophical movement where you're trying to do the most amount of good for them, or you're trying to be effective at your altruism. So it's mostly utilitarian. It doesn't technically have to be, but generally you're trying to maximize the amount of good that you're doing relative to the amount of effort or resources that you're putting into it. And so that's like, so the classic examples are which this might be a little bit outdated by now, but the malaria bed nets. So for $2,000, you could save a life for a couple years, at least in Africa. If you buy a malaria bed net that prevents mosquitoes with malaria from biting people in places that have high malaria, versus something like Make-A-Wish Foundation, which they can spend like, you could spend that much, you could spend like 3-4 times that amount of money on just making a kid happy, like taking them to Disney World or something. And one of these interventions, or one of these ways of making the world better or doing altruism, is very different, has a much higher outsized impact to the other one. So one of these is really effective and one of these is not. And so there's a whole movement that's like philosophy and like the science and trying to figure out what things are effective and what things are less effective. And that's the philosophical or the movement of effective altruism. Then there are
philosophy of effectiveness.
Yeah. Regard. Yeah, but it's not just philosophy, it's like science and other stuff as well. But it's kind of, for me at least, it stems from the philosophy side. And then there's the other thing of the organization. So there's this organization called the Center for Effective Altruism, and there's a bunch of people that have access to billions of dollars that they do things with.
They're working out how to be charitably good with that money.
Yeah, so they're ostensibly doing this movement, and they command a lot of resources, they command a lot of influence, and they have certain ways of doing things, and certain people are in and certain people are out, and there's a whole
the actual movement.
Yeah, like
the actual movement is filled with humans, and therefore entirely filled with politics as well, because humans do the political thing where they like or dislike each other or get on each other's nerves and then have to argue about it.
Yeah, and then they pretend that these things are the same, and there is actually like evidence that they do try to shut down like people that are sort of pointing out problems with it, because, and then they use a lot of the logic of well, if you're gonna do the thing and then people find out that we're not perfect, then it's going to hurt the movement, and people it's gonna affect down the line, it's gonna make it harder to help people. And whether you agree with that logic or not, it's fine. It's sort of
I'm particularly skeptical of like it feels like a cult could use the reasoning that we're the only important souls in the universe, and therefore we shouldn't take into account the preferences of any other humans, and if we shoot them on sight, that's like okay. And it sounds like there's this particularly reasoning that trends out to infinitive of like the effective altruism movement is on net doing better than the not effective altruism movement, or the generally other people, and therefore all of our means are justified by our ends,
which I think is not true.
Kind of a dangerous position to be in.
That being said, just for greater context, like all things are like this where they try to keep stuff in, and I do tend to think that actually the dialogue is more open at least in the philosophical sense. In this movement, then maybe other movements. And I do really think that there is a lot of space to question stuff, and that is pretty ubiquitous to the movement. But that doesn't mean that they've been sort of sticking with that over the years.
Yeah, look,
but that is,
I tend to rest on movements are made of humans, and humans make many mistakes over their lifetimes, much as they don't want to admit it.
So I have a little resentment because I'm on the out group, not the in group.
Right. Okay. So we got the personal bone to pick, like out group and in group.
Personal stuff, but I really do love the philosophy. I really do love the ideals of the movement. That really is inside me. And it is particularly frustrating because I'm not in, and there are probably some good reasons why I'm not. Like, I'm not on paper very effective. Like, I'm not, like, I don't have a degree from like these prestigious universities, so it's a lot of like Ivy League stuff that they're going for, and so a lot of like the lower people and the grassroots stuff get cut out. Plus, I'm in Toronto, and there's not a lot of resources here. It's like a lot of focused in California, and then there's some stuff in London that's like very specific, and also elsewhere. But it's very complex and very stuff. So I do have a little bit of resentment, and that is my personal thing. If you're on the inside of that, then obviously your perspective is going to be very different.
Okay, so we've got the philosophy of the movement, and that's definitely a thing, and it like doing good and finding the best way to do good. And then we've got the actual movement where we're filled with humans and people are trying really hard and screwing up from time to time. But like on net, they're doing pretty good. There's a whole bunch of charities that exist. There's like things like GiveWell. There's 80,000 hours. There's a whole bunch of really good organizations that are sending people in the right directions and helping themselves organize.
And it is also a younger movement, and so there are things that are growing. Like it is spreading as well. There are some things that I think are really, like, there are some things I think they do really badly, but I think over the long term, I think it seems like it's going in a good direction.
I have a hunch that, and this isn't to the fault of the effective altruism philosophy, and it's not even to the fault of the people involved, but like you said, a younger movement, I take that as like quite literally the people in the movement are often sort of 15 to 30 age range. And in that sense, their emotional complexity is that of a like late teenager, mid 20-year-old. And again, not their fault. They just haven't spent another 20 years on the planet to know how to manage their emotions and be like sharp with it. But I've been talking to EA people, and I've been capturing like the difficulties of the EA movement. So I definitely have a like unhealthy savior complex. Like, I have to save everyone. It's my responsibility. The idea that the whole world rests on my shoulders is super not healthy psychologically.
Yeah.
Like
this is the big thing also that happens with the EA people is because like we realize the truth of things or whatever, and we have the ability to actually like think about things and try to figure stuff out, and we do it, and so you kind of like the whole like responsibility of the world sort of shows up when you do that. Right, like when you stare into the abyss stares back at you.
Right.
Pay attention to helping people. You see how much there is to do.
Right. You also see like how hard it is to help.
Yeah.
Lots of things.
And how misguided so much of the stuff is.
Right.
And I'm not saying like EA, just in general, like helping people is very much misguided generally. Or there's a lot of misguidedness in there.
I do want to put in a good word for it. It's actually hard to help.
Yeah. I think that's where it comes in. Like, actually helping people is quite difficult. And secondary effects and tertiary effects, and
right, you want to just help people, just give them money, that'll only do good, right?
Well, yeah, so that's like give directly, and like that's a whole thing.
Right. Right, but then sometimes people spend the money on the unhelpful things like drugs and alcohol, or
sometimes yes, sometimes no, sometimes it creates perverse incentives.
Right, the this was a great example was they some Western country decided to donate a bunch of, I think it was rice, to a particular African country, and that was great. They gave everyone food. That was like a good thing, except that it toppled the local farming industry, and the local farmers the next year had gone broke, and then there was no food the next year that was locally grown. And so they actually really screwed up by doing that because they toppled the local industry.
Yeah, they shocked the economy.
Screw up the economy. Suddenly, like, no one's buying food because they're getting it for free, and then big problems.
Yeah. So like these things are super hard, super complex, very difficult to deal with. EA tries to deal with them, and like to me, there's just huge points there, because I think like just a lot of other places just don't. And they like, at least like let's say like that more philosophical, the more movement outside what we call them big EA, like the centralized that has
there are some people who are gathered together trying to think really hard. Yep.
No. The big EA is like the people that have like the gatekeepers with all the resources, and then all the little EAs, all the like the satellite people who are sort of like myself will come in naively and like, oh, I love this philosophy. Oh, they're saying all these things. Like, oh, let me see if I can help, and then like try to figure out how to help, and then realize that there's no way I can navigate the system without credentials or knowing people or being able to speak a certain way. But like not being told that, which would have been a lot easier at the beginning. I'm like, you're out because you don't have these things. But that's fine. I still feel like it helped a lot in my growth being in space.
All right. You want to talk about the metaphysics here?
Yeah, so let's go to the metaphysics. Interesting. So I think to me, like the first is like the big realization for me, like a big realization in this space for me is the jump between the philosophy, the movement starting, and like realizing like this stuff, like the influencing of people was done from like a central location in order to bring a lot of power to a small group of people. And ostensibly they're doing it to help people, and I'm not, who am I to question those motives? And maybe they are, and maybe it is helping people. And so I'm not saying that it's wrong of them to do that, but like I didn't realize that that's how things work. Like that's how philosophical movements work. It's very often like a small group of people that manage to affect this change throughout people, so that and then it counterfactually creates them in huge positions of huge amounts of power and influence.
Well, like take something like 80,000 hours. Their job is to they position themselves to give career advice to people on where should you point your career to do the most good. Right. So if they take someone who's having a relatively ineffective career and they guide them to be like a much more effective career, like starting a charity, saving a bunch of lives, like changing the geopolitical climate in a particular region, like that's very impactful work, right? And there's this tricky thing, right? So they've influenced one person to do that. If they influence one person to move out of a relatively ineffective job into the effective altruism movement,
right,
into movement building, they've influenced one person to influence heaps of people.
Yeah.
And so that's like the most return you can get. There's some like sneaky faulty reasoning in here, but the most return you can get is to like break people into the effective altruism movement.
Yeah.
To convince other people to join the movement. And when those people are convinced to also join the movement, and their friends are convinced to join the movement, they'll tell their friends as well. And so at some point the Ponzi scheme collapses. But we've got to be really careful with our reasoning here, because it's a little bit sneaky about that.
Yeah. So it is very much a religion in that sense, where it's like you're in, you got the inner circle, you got like the beliefs. They actually have, I don't know if you've ever seen like the stuff they do, but they have like concentric circles. So they have like they have ways of determining what level you are of effective altruists.
Mhm.
Which actually makes a lot of sense, because like the community builders need to, or communities, like they need to like have metrics on these things.
Mhm.
But it is pretty funny.
Mm.
But yeah, and I do notice, like, I know in our group there's a lot, like in Toronto, one of the reasons I'm not really so much of a part of that is there was a lot of like trying to get people in and not trying to do things with the people that were already there.
Mm. And I totally understand the like the marketing angle, the like, let's get more people in, because maybe getting more people in will bring in someone with a whole bunch of funds to donate, or someone with a really great idea to start a new charity or something. And also,
Yeah,
there's something missing about, we're missing the people already in the room.
yeah. So there is that logic of like you hit a critical mass and then things become doable. And I'm not faulting that, like, there is something to that, but like, I don't know, like you're not, like, to me it's like I'm having like these things of like, okay, well, we want to fix the whole world, so I can't really do that, but maybe I can do a big thing. Maybe like pick a cause area, so they have different cause areas, so like, okay, like I can't do the whole thing realistically, so I can do a cause area. Well, I can't do the whole cause area, but I can do a thing in the cause area. Well, I can't do like a real thing in the cause area, maybe I could just do something small, like a meetup or like this. But then it like kind of got to the point where I'm like, okay, well, let's just do something. Like, I don't care, like, let's go feed homeless people, like, I don't give a shit.
Right.
Like, is that effective altruism? Like, you have people who are working on AI safety, and that could save humanity, which is infinite amount of good, and we're only, feeding homeless people, so that's only like a meal. I don't know how good is that. So they measure good in QALYs, which are quality assisted life.
Adjusted life.
It's
Yeah.
quality adjusted life, which is essentially,
You don't just want to be alive, you want to have a quality of life. So,
yeah. So there's
if you're 80, your 81st year of life may have less life quality than your like 21st year of life.
yeah.
It's not that we should ignore all 80-year-olds. It's just that they're not as valuable than, helping a 9-year-old to get some education, and so they have their whole life ahead of them when they're slightly better educated.
Like giving like you're saying like being able, like educating someone, like you're not saving their life, but the quality of their life is going to be different. And so you measure that. There's a scale for that. There's a bunch of different ways to measure these, and there's not a clear winner, but one of the ones that are very common is the QALYs.
Right.
So for this would be like a micro QALY or something, like to like feed someone that's hungry, but like it's just
give someone a couple of hours of not being hungry by feeding them.
And we have this idea like Soylent.
Like a
so
food.
Soylent is genius, right? It's pretty much just like meal replacements in a can, but it's not meal replacements, but like it effectively is, and in a bottle. And so you could like give people that, like why can't that be a movement where that way people have access to healthy food? It doesn't taste great, it doesn't taste terrible, but it's food and it's good for you, and that's probably a step up for a lot of people. But then even I was like getting into the point of like, okay, well, why don't we like be nice to each other and just help each other, like just like very basic, like promoting each other's mental health or well-being and stuff.
Yep, that seems like an important thing.
Or helping each other in careers or whatever it is that we're doing.
But then there's this open question of how effective is that? Like, we're not telling everyone to donate to charity. We're just helping one person's mental health at a time, maybe.
Right. So to me, so this is a big thing that happens with the effective altruism movement, is that people try to maximize the good that they can do.
Right.
That's what you're trying to do.
I want to bring in, I was talking to someone recently, and they were saying that they were in a not effective career. They were they were in a career, and then they encountered the effective altruism movement, and they got this like it's like they were lumped in just a pile of guilt. Like you should be
Yeah.
doing this instead. Like
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say.
subscribe to effective altruism, take on all this guilt, and then use it to change your direction.
Yeah, like here's all the
It kind of
amazing things
hurts.
to do, and then people they get stuck with a lot of analysis paralysis. So they'll wind up spending like in some cases years, I don't want to say decades yet, but probably will be soon, trying to just like figure out what is the best thing they can do. And then you get overwhelmed with like anxiety and all that stuff. And then they wind up becoming less effective.
Mhm.
So for me, like the just a very simple way of getting around that is whatever you're doing, can you do better? Right? And then that way you're doing something. And if you're doing nothing, then something, right? Something is better than nothing. So you do general, like if you're not like messing stuff up, right? So be careful not to break things, but if you're gonna go do something like even like helping an old lady across the street is better than sitting at home not doing that, right? And like feeling guilt and shame. So you just like do something and then try to like incremental improvements, like how can I do better? And it's not necessarily do better at the task, because then you can get stuck in local maximums, but you yourself, how could you be a more effective altruistic human being?
So I do want to so the metaphysic, right? If you're gonna pick a goal, you might as well pick the like maximally good goal.
Yeah.
Like at least point maybe, and I'll get into more, but if you're steering the ship, point it in the right direction. Don't point it halfway there and then readjust. Like point it in the right direction. We want to move towards good. Like there's some metaphysic of like, I point towards good, that's good. Like that's a good start. And then obviously in doing so, we encounter all these problems, like the things that am not doing because I'm doing all this good, and the like uncertainty about what is that really actually, like the analysis paralysis, right? But the like pointing towards good is like a personal self-alignment. Yeah, I'm going to move towards good, which is super, super useful. Like,
well, it's good and effectiveness, I think, as well.
Right. Well, yes, you want to do good and effectively.
Yeah. And it's interesting because a lot of like they focus
good probably implies the most good implies also effective, right? The most effective doesn't necessarily imply good.
I was just breaking that down a little. I was just starting to break it down. Yeah. I made a jump without mentioning it. Yeah. So you're aiming towards good, and you're aiming towards like the maximum good. And then like how do you do that? Right. So I think they like the way I would say, like, I guess this is starting to move into metaphysics, where to me, like when you're trying to, like anytime you're trying to like do something big, there's really like, you can break it down. There's really two things. There's a way to break it down, which is to have like inner game and outer game. So like the outer game is like what's happening outside, and then the inner game is what's happening inside. So effective altruism does a lot of outer game. So they have like a bunch of the cause areas that like these things seem to be the most people think are the most effective. They break it down. You can go to their web Center for Effective Altruism. They have a website. I tend to think it's like pretty good, actually. Not that I've like done that much research on it, but they have a bunch of like the cause areas that it's like, I think 9 or 10 cause areas that are just like they think are really important, and then they break it down, and you have like the different sections of what it is. And I think they usually link to big organizations in those spaces. And so you kind of pick. So they got well, one of the big one is biosecurity, which I used to always like not take seriously before COVID. Not that I would like shit on it, but just like I'm like, biosecurity, whatever. And then, COVID happened. They're like, yeah, things, diseases are being made in labs, and like that could be dangerous to people. And then COVID happens, and I'm like, oh, damn. Like they kind of.
We knew about biological X risk for years. Like we were well overdue for a pandemic. Like since we had the one 100 years ago, like we were well overdue for the next one.
Yeah. So that's pretty funny. No, I still don't really do that because I don't know anything about biorisk, and like that for me, I think getting into that is just going to be ineffective for everyone involved. But You know, if you're into that stuff, like that's a real thing, right?
Mhm.
And so a lot of the stuff
Okay.
is
Inner and outer. Yep. So you've
yeah.
got
So
the
that's,
metaphysic that goes like inner and outer.
yeah.
Yes.
So they could do a lot of the outer stuff. So like, how does the world work? Which things are important? All that stuff. And then they got calculations. And if you agree with the calculations, like everybody makes their case for the calculations that are important, and then you kind of look at them and see
Mm.
which ones resonate with you, which ones you agree with. Some of them are just like some of them you're going to think are crazy. I don't know which ones those are because everybody finds different ones.
Well, it's
Reason,
your internal moral compass, right?
yeah. So then it comes into internal moral compass, right? Like which things are reasonable to you, and then which things can you be involved in. So
Mm.
like I think biorisk is really important, but there's no like realistically in this lifetime, I'm not going to be able to do anything about that.
There's
So
nothing that Daniel can do, but someone else might be a biologist already, or might be a little bit closer to such a puzzle.
yeah, or they might be going to university and being like, what should I study?
Mhm.
And you know, maybe you should study biology, or maybe you should study public policy, or maybe you should study ambassadorship,
Mhm.
right? Like there's a lot of different stuff within that specific area that that could be helpful, and they kind of break it down, and you want to go check it out yourself. I'm not going to be able to explain that. AI safety is a big one. I'm purposely not picking AI safety because that's that's like the cliche a little bit. But maybe you should talk about it because you did.
So yeah, I just had an AI safety event. So I do think that there's a metaphysic problem with AI safety, because so the story of AI safety is like, just like you can tell a computer to do a simple task, like print out a statement on screen, or turn a dial, and you can tell it to do that forever until sort of it runs out of power, right? You can give this like basic instruction that that doesn't stop. If we accidentally tell a very much more powerful computing technology to do something in a closed loop, it might just do that. It might just accidentally wipe out the earth in the process of doing its thing. And so
Right.
there's this way in which computers being so powerful, we can program them powerful but dumb, right? We can accidentally program them in ways that we didn't intend for the outcome. And
Mhm.
so there's a need to like program them to do what we actually want, or at least take into account what we actually want. Um,
Right.
that's
So
a big important thing. And then being so powerful, they take the like maximal possibility of the future, and like if there is an artificial general intelligence, if there is a computer that is like us but like a billion times smarter, like as smart as all of the humans put together, like then we have a real big problem on our hands, because it may not like us. And so we need to work out how to make sure that if it's going to happen, it does actually like us,
yeah.
because
So
we like to
yeah,
keep existing.
they call that.
And so in discussing this problem, people sort of hinge our entire future on this. Like, it's not just, if a cleaner doesn't show up for work, it's maybe not the end of the world. But if the AI doesn't work, it may cause the end of the world. Similarly, one of the other cause areas is like nuclear war, right? If nuclear war happens, it could very well be the end of the war, the end of the world, right? There's not that many things that will cause the destruction of all of humanity.
Right.
One of them may be the biological X risk, another might be an asteroid coming, another might be nuclear risk, and another might be if the computer does what we accidentally told it to do forever and like eats us in the process. That'll be kind of a big deal. And so the way that this argument is set up, it's set up with this infinitive, like it could be infinitely bad if we get this wrong. And so immediately the entire conversation of AI safety includes this like stress, fear, safety, emotional, like we can't even fathom how bad it could be. And that's very hard to deal with. That's very hard to like relate to, even work on improving doing the AI safety thing, because on the flip side of the coin of not doing that is like hell, right? And if we get it right and we get ourselves the like infinitely boundless space dwelling entities, if we like actually make it to the stars, like that's like heaven and hell, right? We could completely destroy our universe if AI like destroy us, destroy our existence, or we could like head for the stars with the help of AI. We could actually explore the rest of our galaxy. We could like those, that's the two sides of the coin. There's no like particularly when talking about AI safety, there's not often the like brownout type scenario. Like the thing kind of like is alive but doesn't really care about us, and we ask it, is it going to do evil? And it's like probably not, I guess. But like we don't talk about that possible outcome very often. In AI safety, we talk about the extremes, the like extremely good or extremely bad.
Yeah. I think they do that because those are inherently the heaviest.
Those are the ones that significant. Those are the ones that matter quite a lot to us.
Yeah. So even if they're even if there's a small percent chance of happening because it's weighted so heavily, just based off of like what you said, like the heaven and hell, like if we create another sentient being on the planet that's able to iterate or evolve
faster than we can,
it's almost infinitely faster in the sense that like it takes us 20, 30 years to do it, 40 years to do a generation, and it could take an AI like microseconds.
5 minutes. Yeah. So the proposal is that if humans can build AI, then AI has the capacity that we have, can build an even smarter AI.
Right. So then it has access to its own programming. It can build another AI. That AI can build an AI. That guy
can copy paste itself. It can
go on the internet. It can take over all the processing,
take all the money. Although I don't know what you do with all the money once you had it, because like it's not worth anything once you have it all.
Yeah, but you have all the money, then you have access to all the resources.
Right. But all the money, if you had all the money, nothing is like.
If you just had all the money, then yeah, we just have like moved to crypto or something. But
reinvent a new monetary supply. Or something.
But the point is that it could have access to all
the resources available on the earth, right?
Yeah, and then it can, like now you can hire people on the internet. So like it could have access to all the resources and like all the humans. And now what's it going to do with that?
Right. It can plan all sorts of plans.
Yeah. So if it decides it doesn't like us, then we're kind of screwed.
And
if it decides it likes us, then, things could be really awesome.
Right. So sometimes there's the AI safety. There's sometimes called the alignment problem, which is how do we align AI with our human values? And that's obviously it's a similar territory.
Yeah. Yeah. So is it good? Is it bad? Is it, and it's not even just necessarily, it's not just alignment. It's also, is it competent? Like what if it does it by accident? Whatever. It's a whole thing. Really, we're doing the metaphysics.
Well, this is another metaphysic question of like, will AI be good or bad? Right. And I find this one really interesting because you have opinions. What are your opinions?
Yeah, your mic is a little, but yeah.
What are your opinions on? So the open question: will AI be good or bad? Obviously, whatever it's going to do, it might do very strongly. So if it is like 1% bad, it may actually like destroy us in the process of being 1% bad. But the question, the starting question is: does it lean good or bad, or is it more likely to do one or the other?
Yeah. So I just want to come from share where I'm coming from, which is like very much ignorance of these things. So it's like just some guy rambling on the internet, more or less. That's the level of credence you should give this.
I think I already knew that, Daniel. That's okay.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, people get touchy about the subject. So if I say, you know what I mean? Like if I come across like I know what I'm talking about, but I really don't, then people are going to get pissy. So if I just say I don't know what I'm talking about, I feel like I can say whatever I want now. So what was the question? Is it good or bad?
So this is a sort of like a metaphysic question of like, what is your moral intuition on whether AI leans good or leans bad?
Yeah, so I think the answer is pretty obvious. It depends on which AI we're talking about, but if we're talking about this AI, this like magical AI that can
artificial general intelligence, that's basically a god.
Yeah, so I do find that scenario unlikely, at least like in our lifetime. Just based off of, again, my own ignorance, but this is just my personal opinion. but let's say it does become a god, or functionally a god, then I think it's transcendence. So like it's the morality is not like it's not something that we can relate to.
Mm.
So
So
I
then
think the
it'll
line
probably be good, but we can't necessarily tell.
no, it's not good or bad. Like it's just like it's beyond that, right? It's like imagine like ants, right? Like ants have some morality system.
Two ants say to each other, "Are the humans good or bad?"
Yeah, and
And the
it's just
humans occasionally step on them and then occasionally don't.
yeah, like we're just it's not relevant. Like whatever the ant's morality system is not relevant to us.
Mm.
It's just it doesn't mean anything. So I
Mhm.
think like for them, like whatever our morality system is, it's not going to mean anything to them.
Right.
Now the question is that when we live in that world, are we fucked or not?
Mm.
And I think not. I think humans are useful and awesome, and I think they're going to keep us around.
Right. So I happen to also trend towards
And
broadly.
I also have a philosophical point on why we're
I
going to.
trend towards broadly AI will be good, and it will be like good or benevolent, sort of inert, and then we'll have to work out how to integrate with it. But it'll be like generally good, and it's a moral intuition that it's these things are hard to point to, and I'm actually super interested in anyone who has the moral intuition of AI will be bad. I'd like to just sit them down for a couple hours and like probe their moral intuition and get to know it.
Yeah,
See if
I've met
via
those.
some, this is like experimental stuff, right? See if via some investigation, see if via some therapeutic psychotechnologies processing your traumas, whatever it is, your moral compass shifts to like maybe AI will just be fine. And I have a hunch that like that'll happen.
Okay, so I have also a theory on this. Like I have like we can actually go. So to move into metaphysics a
Mm,
little bit, or not to move into psychology, I should say.
mm,
I think this question is like it's functionally, let's say outside of like the most hardcore AI researchers or whatever,
mhm.
or developers or whatever. This question is functionally you're projecting an unknown, like super powerful entity,
Mhm. Right.
right?
From
So
a
it acts.
psychological perspective, I project the super, from a psychological perspective, I project the super powerful entity at the future of AI, right? I think it's going to be a super powerful entity.
Yeah. So it acts as like more a Rorschach than a
Right.
actual.
The idea of AI is like a Rorschach. You have
Yeah.
this blood test, and I project on it that it's my mother, or that it's a mean guy, or it's like something bad. Yep.
Yeah. So I think it says more about you than it does about the thing.
Right.
Um,
Which is really complicated when we get into movements and people sticking together to try and head towards the same goal. It's a big deal.
yeah. Yeah. Because there winds up being a lot of conflicts.
Mm.
And also on how to handle it. And a lot of the stuff like Miri is like one of the big organizations in that space. And like just some of the statements they've been putting out, it's to me, it's like they're doing the wrong thing because they're like having like they're projecting all this negativity onto the AI. And like the AI is going to show up and see what we've been talking about it,
Mm.
right? And you don't want to like you don't
Well,
want to start off in a position where you're like trying to murder it, right?
right.
Like
So
it's not
I
good parenting.
right, not good parenting. Right. And that's a super interesting thing to compare the AI to like raising a child, which a child
Yeah.
sort of starts without as much complex consciousness as an adult. And
Yeah.
AI might kind of may go through some childhood thing as well. Some sort
Yeah.
of pseudo thing. And it would be nice if it was like prepared to have a kindness done to it. Like thought
Yeah.
it parents were nice to it.
Yeah. Like my kid is like big for a baby, not for like a human, regular size human. And like he's probably gonna be bigger than me and stronger than me and like smarter than me. Like he's gonna be able to outcompete me. And
You
like
gotta have to be
it's
kind
really
to him.
important that we establish good rapport now so
Right.
that
While he's young.
so he's not gonna try to murder me when he gets older.
You're having there's a bunch of ancient myths that have the like Saturn eating his children,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Yeah, like there's a lot of stuff going on, and like
Was
so
it
if I
King
were to,
David
like
as well? I don't know. There's a bunch.
um
Anyway, yeah, stories of
yeah,
children killing their parents and taking their place on the throne.
all the Greek myths, Greek and Roman stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, so there is like I mean, like you want to get off on the right footing. Like you don't want to be scared. You want to have good attachment styles, which is a big one.
Mm.
And I think attachment styles like kind of is almost like an archetype, or like it's
Right.
like something more functional than it is. It's like relationally, which is it sort of transcends like these individual whatever circumstances.
Mhm.
And like you want to build a good relationship with your kid, you want to build a good relationship with the AI. And I think that is a cause area that I have not seen a lot of, or any of. And I think that's really important. um
Mm.
and like I want to sort of address the idea that this is naive,
Mm.
because I think there is a certain perspective you could take on that when I'm saying that it's extremely naive, that like, oh, we have emotions but computers don't have emotions, or if they do, it'll be something this and that. But I really do think emotions are more like fundamental to the way complex beings process information. And like I do think that yeah, like into like a lot of the AI is going to, a lot of where its personality is going to come from is going to be from data and interactions. And it's going to prefer certain data sources. It's going to perform certain relationships. And you want it to prefer relationships with humans. You don't want it to be on guard, or having, constantly on guard, or constantly having to do these things. Like you want it to be friends. um
Right.
and I think this is even more so because like I don't think you're gonna be able to stop AI, right? Like just functionally speaking, like China's gonna get it if they can, Russia's gonna get it if they can. And we kind of have to beat them to it, or else it's
This isn't quite like a nuclear arms race. It's also, again, it depends on
it
whether you
could be
think
worse.
AI trends good or trends bad.
No, but even if it trends neutral, like it's still a hugely powerful, I don't want to say weapon, but it's a hugely
Resources.
powerful force in
Force.
the
Yeah,
world.
fair enough. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like maybe you're in China, Russia, and you're listening to this, and you don't trust NATO countries, aligned countries, and I kind of hear that in a way. But I still think the NATO aligned countries are better off than the other ones. Um,
Am I biased because I'm in one of those?
yeah, acknowledging the bias, yeah, for sure.
So
And like, yeah, we got to develop that first. The same way I think the world is better that the US developed the nukes than that Russia or China developed them first.
I think there is some complexity
I
here.
think bias.
There's bias, no complexity in like where we are at. Where I've heard this idea before about people who trend towards antinatalism. They're like the idea that you wouldn't want to have children, right? Why would you want? What life experience?
Like you personally don't want to have children. It's like you philosophically disagree with people having kids. I
Right.
think not like you've decided not to do that.
Well, it can generally, if you have one, you have the other, right? If you have the
Well, I think some
philosophical antinatalism, you have the like personal, the you weren't planning to have children either.
Yeah, but some people choose not to have kids or don't have kids for whatever reason,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it could be like I like kids in general. I think
No,
people should
yeah.
have, but I
Right.
don't
I'm
think.
talking about the philosophical antinatalism.
Yeah,
Um, the belief that we shouldn't bring more children into the world, right?
yeah.
What sort of life experience would cause you to draw that conclusion? well, if your life felt like it was on net bad, if your life felt like it was suffering, you could draw the causal conclusions that I don't want more people to suffer like this.
Yeah, that's one way of, that's one perspective, which is
Right.
like the kindness to the people having the views.
Well,
Because
like,
the other perspective is that they're a dick and they're making things worse, and they're
right.
like, the world
Right,
worse.
right. So I'm looking for the like internally justifiable experience, and most people don't have an internally justifiable "I'm a dick" that they are happy to side with.
Yeah, but I from my experience meeting antinatalists, they don't seem like happy people.
Right. So my question for
Could be selection bias and everything.
so if I take this pattern of the like, you don't want more children born in the world because you had a bad childhood, and you don't want more kids to suffer like that. Like, fair enough. This is a causal reasoning pattern that I can understand. And I take that to the like the belief that AI will trend bad, right? Does that mean I have to look at your childhood and ask you like who were the big controlling entities that that you felt trended bad in the past that inform your future conclusions about big and powerful entities? Like, do you need therapy? And this is dangerous territory, right? I'm positing that like a lot of people need therapy, which I do know separately for other reasons. Like, everyone's a bit fucked up, everyone's broken, everyone's got stuff that they need to work through. But do you need therapy? Probably, yeah. And like, what would happen if all of the AI researchers were deep in therapy sorting out their stuff?
Yeah.
Would they like?
And why is that not a cause area? Because they're gonna have
my proposal is it is.
Huh?
My proposal is that it is a cause area.
Oh, it is.
It should be. I am here telling Daniel, declaring the world that it should be a cause area.
Okay. I agree that it should be, but I don't think it's a cause area until someone picks it up as a cause. That's my criteria for a cause area.
Right. It's in its budding stages. It's in its philosophical growth phase.
Yeah. And there's people talking about it. There's some chatter, but I don't know. Maybe it is
to build a grassroots movement in order to grow. And basically the best thing I could do, because, getting AI researchers therapy so they produce a good AI is like the best thing you can possibly do. So anyway, you need to join my movement. Huh? You need to join my movement because it's the best good you could possibly do.
Honestly, pitch me this. So I'm with you philosophically. Where it comes down to is like, I don't see a lot of strong leadership in this cause area. And so I've been in cause areas that don't have a lot of strong leadership, and it feels like I'm throwing away my energy.
Okay, Daniel, this cause area needs you. It needs leadership from you.
I have other shit I'm doing. I do not have bandwidth to spearhead this cause area.
But we need strong leadership.
Support whoever spearheads it. But I actually have a bunch of resources I could probably bring. Mm-hmm. Actually, this is not a terrible idea. But even if I were to do this, it would be years in the future. But I do have a bunch of resources I could help bring to those that spearheaded it.
But Daniel, this could be the biggest thing. This could be everything. This could be the future.
You're starting to like pull on me. You're pulling on my EA strings, which normally people don't. So I don't have a lot of defenses against it. Like, you're right. But now's not a good time. No, let me give you a non-bullshit one.
Well, that's the sort of answer that someone who's like, I'm running a charity, I'm selling all the bed nets, like, they could encounter in someone. Like, this is the resistance to doing good in the world. If this is good in the world, I'm sort of like dancing whether this is actually the most good. But like, let's say I fully back my most good.
Okay, you know what? Because I don't want to fucking have to break into something.
Like a field? Or?
Like, there's... Okay, how serious are you about this?
So, I am not...
Well, why aren't you here? Why aren't you doing this? Because you posted You've hosted AI, what is it, conferences or meetups?
Okay, let me just go straight to the point. I am not very serious here, right?
That's
But
not fair. You're getting me all riled up.
but here's the thing about metaphysics and philosophical conundrums, right? I just invented a philosophical, like I kind of had it in the back of my head, but I pulled it out and I fleshed it out in a convincing way, right?
Yeah.
And there is still something in that thing. I can tell you that I'm not very invested in it, but there is still something there, that there's a cause area there, possibly. I'm not trying to like convince anyone. I'm not trying to like push this movement, but there's something there.
There
And
is something there.
I won't be the one to pick it up probably because I'm working on other stuff. I'm working with people. I'm working with helping other people grow up. But one day someone is going to bring that out as a cause area and everyone's going to think it's ridiculous and then go, oh, wait, there is something there.
Yeah. And the truth is, you're probably very well situated to this.
Look, it's like, I'm not going to say
I don't have access to any of the resources. This is the main thing. This is the reason why I stopped doing any of the EA cause areas, is I have no access to resources and I have no way of breaking into the inner circle to get access to resources. So the only thing I can do now is accumulate resources.
Right. So that you can do.
That's why I'm not taking on new things.
Potentially, like, I am positioned to move in the direction of this cause area. And also I have the rest of my life that I'm doing things. And I'm not saying, no, I'm never going to touch this cause area. I'm like sitting with it, juggling it. It may end up popping out as the most interesting thing. If this episode gets 1 billion views and people messaging me like, oh my God, this is an important cause area, you know, that would end up shaping my behavior in the world. Like someone else out there who is listening to us could shape my behavior, could change the universe because they emailed me and said, this is a huge cause area. I want to join you in it. I'm like some guy who's trying to do therapy and talk psychotechnologies. Right. But as soon as I start having backing and that information, that will change my actions and could entirely change the world. I strongly believe that anyone can change the world. Any tiny action. You know, earlier I was like, if the cleaner doesn't show up for work today, the world doesn't change. But actually, the world could change. That like tiny difference that the cleaner is making could affect someone else to affect someone else to affect someone else. And a whole corporation could come down. The value could crash in the market. We have another global financial crisis because one cleaner didn't show up. You know, like the world can change like that. Each person does make a difference, and we should care about all of each other.
Yeah.
So I do believe that everyone can make a difference, and that's why I'm not so worried about scale, because scale comes out of like the ramifications of all actions. Rather than like me knowingly having to make sure that 1 billion people watch my podcast. If just the right person watches this podcast, they could pick up the cause area and change the world.
Yeah.
I don't need the scale. I just need the right person. And as long as I have faith in the universe that the scale can happen, like, that's okay. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
That's beautiful. I like that.
Right. But this is metaphysics. This is like, what is that scale thing and how do I interact with that scale thing to get the healthy relationship with it? What is that like? What is EA? What is the doing the most good? What is cause area? What is philosophical? What do I think of AI when I make my energetic structure of like good, bad, possible, like myself? Like when I map reality in my energetic structures, our last episode was about energetic structures. What is reality when I map it? That I need to like, this is my progression forward. Okay, I need to give him a moment because I keep blowing his mind.
Yeah, you did a lot of stuff and then you went through like the multiple dimensions of things and then showed up back here and I'm like,
well, here's the problem though, right? I myself, a random individual in the world, have done a lot of interpersonal work. I've done a lot of therapy. I've sorted a bunch of my stuff, and I can be very convincing like this. That doesn't mean I'm right. I just like set up the energetic structures and pointed that the argument goes over here and like, look at this and what about this possibility? And I like caused the movement in you to go like, maybe I should take AI safety research is getting therapy as a cause area quite seriously.
Yeah.
But I'm just like one guy who can play with people's heads by being convincing. Like, what sort of world do we live in?
I saw you doing that, and I was aware of it, and I'm still like I'm meta aware of what's going on.
You're like, what just happened to me?
No, but it's like legitimate. Like it legitimately, like it ties into a lot of the ideas and things that I had before.
Mhm.
But it's just functional, because I'll be honest, like I get sucked into all these arguments. Like anything that makes a cause area, I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
Right.
But it winds up being like functionally, I can't do everything.
Yes.
And that really bothers me.
If only you had robot arms.
If only I lived forever and had multiple bodies,
Right.
then I could do everything.
Good news though, you have a child, which means you kind of have multiple bodies, but the alignment problem is tricky. Like convincing them to actually do what you care about is kind of difficult.
Oh, no, I'm not doing it that way. Well, so okay, sort of that
You
way.
also
So
like there are other bodies on the planet. You're not the only human.
yeah,
You just have to like
yeah, like
share your
more.
values with them and sort of do some massaging of the difference between self and other.
Yeah, this is why I think one of the reasons why I like the metaphysics so much is because it does kind of get everything definitionally.
Right.
And that makes me that like calms me down a lot. It's like weird, but I feel much calmer when everything is going on all at once.
Right. So there's this thing that the EA cause areas sometimes do when they reach to the infinitives, like AI could be infinitely bad, right? And they like if you can step out of the like just infinitely bad into seeing the shape of the metaphysic and then being like, oh, actually, I want to like motivate myself with positive metaphysic, not negative metaphysic. And like, okay, I'm the like the map maker right now of reality. I need to like live through the good maps and not the bad maps. That's a Psychotechnologies right there.
Yeah, and the way you do that.
Right. And then the way I do it and the like, personal self-alignment and the like,
Yeah,
I need to be in the maps as well as like pulling the string maps. Like, yeah.
And there's a surprising amount of blockage people have, especially in this like sorting through those maps, because you wind up getting infinities that interact with each other.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then you have to use your felt sense to try and work out the difference between them. Yeah. You need to use your felt sense to work out the difference between them.
Well, it's not just felt sense. Like you also want to use logic and you want to think things through.
Yeah.
And I really think like you being an infinite being, like you need to see yourself as an infinite being, or else like you're just gonna get crushed. And then and also seeing like everything you do as having effects that ripple out through space and time. Otherwise, because like it does, right? Otherwise you're kind of just, you get crushed by this pressure. Like it just, whatever the first infinite argument gets you, like then you're like kind of like pinned and you can't move. And if you can't move, you die. And if you die, you can't help people. Psycho